Welcome to Hammersmith and Fulham's full council meeting, and a welcome to all our guests who are watching this evening's live stream on YouTube. My name is Councillor PJ Murphy. I'm the Mayor of the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, and I'll be chairing tonight's meeting. By participating in tonight's meeting, you're consenting to being recorded. Please be aware that if your microphone is unmuted, our viewers will be able to hear your contributions, muttered all clear. And if your camera is on, please assume you're being broadcast to YouTube for your family, friends and electors to peruse at leisure. So to ensure the meeting runs smoothly, can you please keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking? If your whip has not provided me with your name when you wish to speak, please use the raised hand facility and wait until I call you. If you wish to raise a point of order under standing orders, please use the raised hand facility and I will invite you to speak at a suitable moment. When called to speak, please state the standing order you wish to utilise. Please wait patiently and do not interrupt the person speaking. If you wish to raise a point of order or personal explanation, you may interrupt the councillor speaking. However, please ensure your points are factual, brief and to the point. Please keep your camera on throughout the meeting unless you're having connection issues. If you have an issue, please email David Abbott and he'll be able to resolve them. I also ask members to keep their speeches brief and to the point. A timer will be in operation. You'll have 5 minutes and I'll indicate when 1 minute is left and then again when your time is up. If you're watching at home and would like to follow along with the agenda, there's a link in the description on YouTube. I'll now hand over to the meeting to our Chief Executive, Kim Smith, for item 1.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to invite formal notifications for the Office of Mayor for the 2021-22 municipal year.
I would like to nominate Councillor PJ Murphy as the Mayor for the municipal year 2021-22.
And is that seconded?
Formally seconded.
Are there any other nominations? Councillor Hearn, does the Labour Group agree that Councillor Murphy be duly elected Mayor of the Borough for the new municipal year?
They do agree, yes.
Councillor Carmel, does the Conservative Group agree that Councillor Murphy be duly elected Mayor of the Borough for the new municipal year?
Agreed.
For the benefit of the recording, does any member wish to vote differently? Councillor Murphy, it is with great pleasure that I formally announce that you have been elected Mayor for the 2021-22 municipal year, and I offer you the congratulations both of the Council and the citizens of the Borough. I invite you to make the statutory declaration of acceptance of office.
I, Councillor PJ Murphy, having been elected to the office of the Mayor of the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, declare that I'll take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgments and abilities. I undertake to observe the code as the conduct which is expected of members of the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham. And I'll now just sign the book.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, and it's a great honour, and it's, as you know, it's been a difficult time for both the Deputy Mayor and myself to fulfil our duties due to the pandemic. But as things open up, we're both determined to be out and about and representing the borough as much as we possibly can. I've had just a couple of mayoral engagements, and the first was a socially distanced food collection with the doorstoppers in White City. And I was just so taken with their commitment and enthusiasm, the generosity of the community, and the active involvement of the QPR team. Yeah, we've had their players, their manager and their support team. And when a manager and football manager and his colleagues take a couple of hours out of their time to support their local community, regardless of who you support, you can't help but be impressed. And so a big thank you to them and a massive thank you to the door stoppers. This is election year and it's bound to be exciting, and occasionally our councillors might find their excitement bubbles over in meetings. Last year I was pretty relaxed about behaviour in the virtual chamber. This year I won't be, and any repetition of some of the behaviour last year simply won't be tolerated. I shouldn't have to enforce good behaviour in this chamber because you all know how to behave. I don't want to, and so I expect all councillors will show sufficient maturity that I won't have to. I wish to inform the council that I've appointed Hammersmith and Fulham Food Bank and United in Hammersmith and Fulham supporting the Tech for Kids appeal as my charities for the Mayoral New Year. My charity last year was Hammersmith and Fulham Food Bank, which we're all unfortunately very familiar with. But Tech for Kids is a very small charity and it's looking to ensure our most deprived children in the borough have access to IT and laptops. We all know that COVID has disproportionately hit disadvantaged children's education, and we need to do everything we can to support them. So I'm really, really pleased to support that charity. I also wish to inform the council that I've appointed Mary Smith to act as my consort during the mayoral year. And I wish to inform the council that I've appointed Councillor Darrell Brown to be my deputy mayor for the 2021-22 municipal year. And she has appointed Mr. Benito Brown to act as her deputy mayor's consort. Item 2 on the agenda is a presentation by the Youth Mayor and the Youth Council. I'm really looking forward to this, and I'd like to invite the Youth Mayor and the Youth Council members to speak. Please go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Brenda Winnett and I'm Youth Voice Coordinator, and I support our very active Youth Council. So I'd like to introduce you, if you've not met them before, to Scarlett and Marley. Scarlett is our Youth Mayor and Marley is one of our amazing Youth Councillors. So I'm going to try and share my screen and a presentation that they've put together just to update on the key work at the Youth Council and wider Youth Voice. So over to Marley and Amy. Is that sharing the screen? Yeah?
Yes, Brenda, it is.
Okay, great. Okay.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having the Youth Council. My name's Scarlett. I'm the Youth Mayor for Hammersmith and Fulham, so it's an honour to be here tonight. Basically, what I'm going to talk to you about is just what the Youth Council have been doing over the past lockdown, what we are doing now, what we are planning to do in the upcoming year. So if we could go on to the next slide, please, Brenda. Thank you. So over lockdown, we have carried on with our weekly meetings. So we have them every single week, and we've been very active on WhatsApp and using Mentimeter, which is an online platform to gauge how young people are feeling over lockdown and to kind of understand what the issues that young people are facing. So obviously it's been a challenge over lockdown, but we have learned a lot from working virtually, and we have achieved a lot more than we would have expected, especially in engaging young people who wouldn't necessarily have been engaged before. So one of the things we've done over lockdown is the Youth Voice Network meetings. So this is basically bringing together young people and professionals from targeted youth services, schools, youth provision, faith and community groups to increase diversity and strengthen and widen youth voice, to share opportunities and to collaborate. So we have had meetings such on social isolation and really important topics that young people feel like they want to improve for their lives and the lives of others as well. So that's been one of the things we've been doing. Another one of the things we've been doing is focusing on supporting young people through lockdown. And this has been done with our youth focus comms and videos to share key messages from our perspective, using positive things to do and where to seek support. Basically just letting young people know where they can get support from. And this was a really amazing thing that we found young people really took to, which was amazing for us. Another thing that we're doing is on the 4th of May next week, we actually have our second ever Youth Achievement Awards, which are celebrating young people's achievements to engage more young people. So now focusing on our 2021 to 22 manifesto. So this is what we'll be working on this year. our Youth Council Manifesto, for those of you who don't know, basically we get feedback from young people on the main issues that young people face, and our job is to try and tackle these issues. This will be done using Youth Council meetings with key leads from the council and partners, linking with current initiatives and identifying opportunities for co-production. So our first item on our manifesto is mental health. Obviously, over COVID and lockdown, young people have been severely affected, especially in regards to their mental health. So one of the things we have found is that social isolation has really impacted young people. So what we are actually doing is a co-production project with Healthwatch and commissioners on access to mental health support, to basically just letting young people know where they can go to seek support, which links into my next point about access to online information. So what we have basically found is that young people, there are so many opportunities out there for young people to seek support. However, young people don't necessarily know where to go for the support. And we see ourselves as sort of this medium platform in letting young people know where they can go to seek professional support. So with this, we're going to work with Digital Hub and the Young Hammersmith and Fulham Foundation, just promoting websites and employment pathways and independent living for disabled young people, basically allowing young people to find the opportunities that can really help and benefit them. The next thing we'll be doing is working with libraries on developing their youth offer and space. And as you mentioned before, Mr. Mayor, it's basically about reaching out to young people with limited access to technology, as I know that we've all found that technology has really impacted us this year. And so for those who've had limited digital access, we want to make sure that they're not left behind and that we can help engage them as much as possible. Our next item is the environment and climate change. So we're working on a project called Imagine 2030, basically about engaging young people on the climate crisis and how they can get involved. And we'd like them to imagine what their 2030 would look like and the kind of steps that we really need them to take to be able to change it for the better. The last thing we'll be looking at is the curriculum for life. This includes sexual health and relationship education and support, tips on staying safe and life skills that this is relevant and meaningful for young people. So that's our manifesto. So now I'm going to pass on to Marley, who's a youth council member, to talk about our next steps. Thank you.
Hello, councillors and Mr. Mayor. I'm Marley. I'm one of the youth councillors and I have been for the past year and a part of Masborough Youth Club and various other youth dedicated organisations. So I'm talking about our upcoming next steps and how and where we're going to go in this next year and how we're sort of trying to see things through. So our Youth Council Manifesto pledges will be shared by mid-21, which will, with identified professional leads. So we will be tackling each point in our manifesto with different key people to help move along and sort of sort out the issues which are really facing the young people, which we have gathered through interviews and researches and groups collating what are the biggest issues for the young people within our borough. We will have updated mapping to share and give young people within the borough the ideas and show them what opportunities there are for them within the borough, including activities and finding key areas which we can help them develop their personal and social skills. We are using various methods to develop and use creativity to push through our ideas and what we wish to achieve. So this is including we're making videos for various different issues that we are covering. We've started to create a small group to focus on the social media aspect of things, to give a wider reach to all the young people within Hammersmith and Fulham, as young people are on social media, and that's one of the best ways to connect with and gain ideas from. We're also holding events such as the Youth Achievement Awards to celebrate the amazing achievements and sort of identify the really great young people within our community and give them recognition for the amazing things that they have done. And we're trying to get as much engagement as possible from outside young people that aren't in the youth committee. So we have a full range of ideas, a full range of what young people want in our borough, because that is the most important thing, is giving a voice to the young people that don't have that voice in their general community, and sort of bringing through their wishes and their wants to you guys, which will hopefully make the greater change for all the young people in our society. We're strengthening our influences by working with other corporations and other companies and other youth-led and youth sort of organized groups, such as youth clubs. We have a monthly meeting where we get all the different youth groups within the borough all into one meeting to sort of talk about how everything is going with us and how we can move forward and how we can work together to sort of get the best outcomes for everyone. We have CPAC, and we're going to have a rota for the youth council to attend with video updates, so that we keep rolling on and we keep progressing and never staying stagnant. We have regular impact reports outlining key recommendations for young people through our monthly I forgot the word for it, but monthly thing that goes out to young people, which they can find, which has all the information about what we're doing, how to sort of stay active, how to stay involved, topics that are going on, and sort of keeping the young people, keeping everyone interconnected as a community, so that we tackle one of our big issues, which is social isolation, and just keeping everyone together and feeling like they're a part of a wider community. We also host the Youth Mayor and Youth Council Youth Parliament elections in June and early July. We have reviewed the process to make it work for this COVID environment that we have been in, so that we make it most efficient and most beneficial for everyone involved. And those are our next steps.
Thank you very much
Marley
indeed.
and Scarlett, thank you very much for explaining all of that. Has anybody got any questions for Youth Council?
Adam, please go ahead. Councillor Connell, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Scarlett, and thank you very much, Marley, for your presentation. I think you're doing an incredible job on the Youth Council. It's always lovely and uplifting to hear what young people are doing in the borough to support each other, and particularly during this most difficult of years that we've had. I was just wondering, while we've got this meeting going out on YouTube, if you had a message to the young people in the borough who'd be interested in doing what you're doing in the future, and what your advice would be to them if they wanted to get involved and support the wonderful work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Adam. Just in reply to your question, I think that I would just say get involved. It doesn't matter if you feel alone, you are not alone. We all feel like this, and it's about changing society for the better. And young people are so engaged, however, they don't feel like they have a voice. Well, now is your chance. You do have a voice. We all want to make change, and you can make change. I think for me, coming to the Youth Council, I did it on a whim just to see how it worked. And then I ended up applying for mayor. And then 2 years later, like, I'm still here, still trying to fight for change. So I think that, you know, Brenda's email is on the slide right here. So if you are a young person and this is something that you're definitely kind of interested in getting involved with, just note down Brenda's email and get involved with her and come to a meeting and just see what it's like. But I think that, you know, we all are here for the same thing. We want to change society for the better. And Marley, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Like Scarlett said, that all it takes is to get involved. It doesn't matter in what sort of way you do that, whether that be in your school, whether it's about inciting change and creating change for our future, because we are the people who have the control to change the future right now, and it's getting right now, because nothing happens by chance. You have to take the action and you have to work for it. What you can imagine your future looking like, you have to work for that, and you have to get involved in any way you can. So please do take down Brenda's email, which is there on the bottom of the screen, and just make sure that you're getting involved at your schools, youth clubs, any way you can make a change, because that is what is needed.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carmel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And can I first start off by congratulating Scarlett and Marley on an incredibly professional presentation that you've given us. You have obviously practiced and rehearsed this many, many times, and it came across really, really well. But the question for me is, within the bounds of reasonableness, what further steps can we as a council take to support you? And I'm sure you understand that you have aspirations that we can't meet, but do you have some practical steps that we can take that are within our power and within our budget to further support the excellent work that you have been taking?
Thank you so much for your question. And I think it is a really good one. And I think that, you know, often it's kind of one of those things where there's only a limited amount we can do, and there's only a limited amount the council can support us. I would say for me personally, what I think would be a really amazing step in kind of improving the support from the council is just to start off maybe just attending meetings. If there was one council member just attending a meeting and seeing what we are doing, so we would have more of an open line of communication with the council. And just often what we do is not necessarily creating new initiatives for young people, but more about signposting them to young people and making sure as we act as the line of communication between the young people and the council. And so I think that maybe if we had a sort of better communication with the council where you guys know what we're doing and we know what you guys are doing, then we can kind of create this support network where we both can kind of support each other. And so we can, you know, try and get the most positive spin on what the council is doing for young people and vice versa. So I'd say maybe just the first step is just kind of attending meetings and kind of just having that open line of communication.
If I could just briefly interrupt before Marley, if he has any comments, says, I don't remember, and I could be mistaken because an awful lot of my emails go into spam. I don't remember being invited to your meetings. So perhaps a reciprocal first step could be to ensure that you invite us to your meetings, so we have the opportunity to get one of our members along to attend and listen to the obviously quite full and detailed discussions that you take. Scarlett, can I ask that you undertake to actually invite the councillors along to your meetings?
I can certainly do that in support of Scarlett as Youth Voice Coordinator. So we did go along to CPAC recently, and the suggestion was there that young people don't necessarily always want to go to, you know, late night meeting things going on, and we get asked to go to a lot of meetings, which is great because young people want that influence, but sometimes it works better if colleagues come along to their meetings. So yeah, more than happy to extend that invite out. CPAC said that they would like a rota, so we're working on that at the moment. So yeah, anyone that would like to attend is more than welcome. We will be sharing the manifesto pledges across the council as widely as we can as well, and anyone that's got any ideas or working on any current work streams or anything that links, you know, feel free to get in touch and we can link that in. And what I'm trying to do is make sure obviously that the youth council's work is linking into corporate agendas and work streams and things that we've got going on, so that we can, strive and push forward the work of the youth council, and they're not working in silo. And it's obviously, supporting everything that we're doing within the council as well. So linking those agendas. But if anyone has any work areas that link to anything the youth council are trying to do, again, feel free to get in touch.
I'm grateful to you, Ms. Winnett, for that kind offer. I understand the reluctance for the youth members to attend evening meetings, but I'm sure the Youth Council will understand that many members of this council have full-time jobs, which precludes attending during what is called working hours. But I am sure that we can find on both sides of the chamber at least somebody to attend the Youth Council, so that we actually hear as in real time, as opposed to in your annual report, what it is you wish to achieve, and whether it is possible for the local authority to assist. And if I'm being perfectly frank, there are some things we can assist with, and there are some things which are, what's the word I'm looking for, aspirations, and we are unlikely to be able to assist with. And in the future, when you have your aspirations, I hope you don't take it as a symbol of Hammersmith and Fulham's unwillingness to work with you, but we will do, I'm sure I can speak on behalf of both sides of the council, we will do what we can to ensure that the youth voice is A, heard, and B, that your reasonable requests are carried out. And I hope that you find this an acceptable compromise.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carmel. I'm conscious of time, and I'm conscious that Councillor Culhane would like to speak. Councillor, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm having some connection issues, so I'll keep my video off for now, if that's okay. I just wanted to say a big thank you on behalf of all of us to Scarlett and Marley. I know, having attended meetings with the Youth Council, with Councillor Coleman and Councillor Holder off the top of my head, firsthand, just the amazing work that they're doing for young people across Hammersmith and Fulham each and every week. It is really something that all of us should be proud of. And I'm absolutely not exaggerating when I say that that group of young people really are the heart and soul of our borough. And I know I'm immensely proud of them, and I know everyone else on this council is too. So thank you for everything you're doing. I know it was some time ago now, growing up's not easy. So the fact that you dedicate so much time to all the other young people in Hammersmith and Fulham and engaging them and getting them involved in making change is a great effort. And thank you so much, and look forward to continuing working with you over the coming year.
Sorry, Marley, you wanted to say a few words?
I just want to put out there that we all at some point have grown up, and we all understand what it is like to be a child in this stage of growing up and becoming young adults, and moving in from being under our parents' care and being looked after into becoming fledged adults and fledged young adults, and the difficult stage it is. And especially the Youth Council, all we wish to do is be that voice, be that connection between the younger generation and the older generation, which has the power to make change, but us who have the ideas, the aspirations, and the drive to push for a better future. And to answer Councillor Carmel's question, all we need to do is be heard and be given the position to be heard. And it is these meetings like this and you coming down to our meetings to have that connection and build the rapport between us as young people and you as the adults of this world and the people with the power to create open communication, better rapport, and the ability to speak frankly, to give you both our aspirations and our reasonable requests, because that is what is going to make change. That is the communication between us as youth council to the young people of our borough, which are in places which don't have the opportunity to hand their voice, and transpiring that to you, which hopefully in hand with us will be able to make a better future for us as young people, because that is all we want, and I know that's all you want, is to leave this world better than what you came into it.
Thanks, Marley. That's very true, and I am conscious of time. I'd just like to move on to our last speaker now, which is going to be Councillor Cowan, the leader of the council.
I'm happy for Rena to say something if she's wants to
sorry.
Briefly come in before me. I know it's, you know.
Yeah, Rena, please go ahead.
Actually, it's Rania, but it's fine. I know it's fine. Since we're running out of time, it doesn't matter. You can go first.
No, you go for it. Go for it. Please do.
Okay. No, I just want to say the exact same thing as what Marley said, but I just think it's really important that, yeah, just like all the members of Youth Council, including you as well, that I guess we kind of have to have this motto of empowering young people to not be silent and actually voice what they actually want to voice, because there is a lot of people out there, young people, that are scared to voice their issues. And I've also come to realize that not a lot of men join in youth council, and I think it's really important that a lot more men can join youth council staff, because like it's better if more people can just join and just be able to actually, I guess, talk their issues rather than just sitting in silence. But yeah, that's what I just wanted to say, really.
That's great. Thanks very much indeed. Councillor Cowan.
Well, thanks, Rana, and thank you also to Scarlett and Marley. I think you made exactly the right points. We set up the Youth Council shortly after we were elected into office in 2014 with a very clear view that we wanted young people at the table helping make decisions. And whilst I think we've still got some way to go to get to where we envisage, it is deeply encouraging to hear what you're saying. Particularly, this has been the worst possible year for young people. A year for someone at 16 is perceptibly much longer in your life than when you get to my age. And I know from listening to a lot of young people that how desperately challenging it's been, and how it has made what is already a time of growth and challenge in your life often harder. So I'm very grateful that you've come together, you've identified that, and you've worked on ways forward. Can I just give one clear message, which I think needs to go to every young person, always, in every generation? You know, the torch is always passed to the next generation, and what they're meant to do is to make the world ever more perfect, to make society ever more perfect. And if you look at the best of progressive history, that's what happens in terms of people's rights, in terms of scientific endeavour, in terms of what it is to live a good life. And so I would just say to you, we will listen and double hard, because whenever you tell us and challenge us to do something better, to be bigger, to be more idealist, our job is to say, well, let's see how we can do this, not to try and to explain to you the realities of life. You know, the realities of life are always turned on the head by each generation who achieves impossible things. And listening to you tonight, I'm absolutely sure that not only will your generation achieve impossible things, but you as individuals will too. It's deeply encouraging. You know, when you look at so many worries around the world, to see young people like you coming forward with the type of values that want to make society a better place. So thank you for giving your time up. Let us know whatever it is you need us to do, and we will endeavour to do everything and to share your idealist ideas of how we change things for the better. And in that, I promise you, you've got a partner, and I have had since we introduced the Youth Mayor and Youth Council shortly after we were elected into office. But thank you again, and keep up the good work. And I hope in the summer we might actually be able to see you physically rather than just in these virtual meetings, and maybe have a more fluid conversation about what needs to change and how we do it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and on behalf of all the councillors, I'd just really like to say thanks to the three of you, but also to the Youth Council for the work they've done through the year. And personally, on Tuesday, I'm going to be attending the Youth Achievements Awards. I'll probably be the oldest person there by a few decades, but I am really looking forward to it. Other councils have been invited to attend online, and I hope they do. And I look forward in this coming year. My commitment to you in this year, I will certainly be attending some of your meetings. And once again, thank you so much for everything you've done. It really is inspirational for us. Thank you. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
I now move on to item 3, apologies for absence. Do you have any apologies for absence?
We have apologies for absence from Councillor Alex Sanderson. Thank you.
And Councillor Rebecca Harvey.
And Councillor Rebecca Harvey, thank you. Any other apologies? Thank you. Item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? So that is no. Item 5, go on to the minutes. Councillor Ahern, do the Labour Group agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of February 2021?
Yes.
Councillor Carmel, do the Conservative Group agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of February 2021?
We do.
And for the benefit of the recording, does any member wish to vote differently? We move on to, sorry, they're carried. We move on to the Mayor's announcements, item 6. It's with much regret that I must refer to the death of Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, who passed away on Friday the 9th of April at the age of 99. Prince Philip, the husband and consort of the Queen, was a hard-working, dedicated member of the royal family, whose diligent support for the Queen has been steadfast throughout her long reign. He'll be sadly missed. A virtual book of condolence has been opened so residents can send their personal messages to the palace. I invite the leader of the council to say a few words.
I know I speak on behalf of all in the borough when I send our heartfelt condolences to Her Majesty the Queen, the royal family, on the sad death of His Royal Highness Prince Philip. Prince Philip spent a lifetime epitomised by one word, and that word is duty. He changed the royal family significantly, but more importantly, worked to change the lives of people across Britain and the Commonwealth, particularly with the Duke of Edinburgh Awards scheme. I know that scheme. I know so many people who've been on that scheme, and it significantly changed their lives, often changing lives of people who were expected to have one particular trajectory, only to find that a whole world opened up to them because of the things that were taught through the Duke of Edinburgh scheme. And in that scheme, I think at its best, epitomises the fine work of Prince Philip, and not only as a fantastic support to Her Majesty the Queen, but also in the dutiful way that he stood up for all that was best in British. That generation that fought the Second World War, all of us, when we look back on those grainy black and white films and we realise the horrors of what the world faced, owe a huge debt of gratitude to everybody who took part. And when Prince Philip's service in the Royal Navy was exemplary, and indeed it was said that he would have gone on to be an admiral if he hadn't chosen the path that he did. My only personal reflection was, again, of that generation, where a few years ago, as Prince Philip was stepping away from public life, I watched him stand for over 5 hours, taking the salute from one of the military regiments as they paraded past him. And he stood with his back straight, wearing a bearskin and full military uniform, saluting for hours. And I sort of watched in awe, wondering whether I could manage that, so much younger than him. But it did typify not just Prince Philip, but that stoic generation that just got on with it and did the right thing. And that's what Prince Philip will be remembered for. So on behalf of everyone in the borough, I know we remember him extremely proudly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowan. Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And can I thank the Leader of the Council and echo his excellent words in memory of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. And I want to add my words on behalf of the opposition and all residents of the borough of condolence, firstly to Her Majesty the Queen, and of course all the rest of the royal family. But also to all those organisations, as the Leader of the Council said, both here in the United Kingdom but across the Commonwealth, who have been involved, so significantly with the Duke of Edinburgh's life. As has already been said, he led an exemplary military career, joining up at a very young age, much younger than all of us councillors in the Second World War, and before that, his challenging, childhood circumstances, with his family having to flee Greece under difficult circumstances, but going on to serve his, adopted country here in the UK with absolute distinction, and as the leader said, would surely have gone on to very high rank and office in the Royal Navy if it hadn't been for his dedication to Her Majesty. But also, as I've already alluded to, it's his involvement with so many organisations, and as the leader has mentioned, the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme is obviously so closely associated with him, and something that the whole country should be very proud, not just of the scheme, but obviously of its founder. But also, as I said, the thousands of organisations that he has paid such a steadfast role in supporting. And I think one of the ones that has been referred to quite a lot over the last few weeks since his sad death has been the Playing Fields Association. And I've heard so many stories from people involved in that, who so this wasn't just a person that put his name and added his royal support to a cause. This is someone that read every minute of every document and asked the right questions at every meeting and pushed forward the agenda. And I think listening to the words of and the report from our youth mayor and her team this evening, that's exactly the kind of organisation that the Duke of Edinburgh would have wanted to have been involved in, and pushing their enthusiasm and helping them to develop themselves as individuals. Obviously his passions and involvement in sports, that ties in so closely with the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme. There's also a connection for us in Fulham with the Hurlingham Club and his love of polo, and not to mention our connection here in the borough with Imperial College, where very recently, in the last decade or so, the Duke of Edinburgh was awarded an honorary doctorate, not just because of who he was, but because of his steadfast interest, support, and help for the scientific and engineering community. I think most of us, especially of my generation, saw Prince Philip as the Queen's husband and loyal companion, and the grandfather of and the father of members of the royal family, but only during the tributes to him who we really understood what an absolutely remarkable life that he led. And there are obviously comparisons with, you know, Prince Albert, but you know, I think, you know, historians in the future will really, you know, put his, you know, His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh really at the top of, you know, the greatest of Britons, and you know, we really do owe him you know, a huge debt, not just in our borough but across the country and across the Commonwealth. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Francis Staton, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you very much. I think everything has been covered very well by the previous speakers, but I do have perhaps a slightly different slant to do it. I would like to say that people regret that he had to give up his naval career, but my goodness, he achieved 100 times more in his real career. How many people can die knowing that 3 million children have been helped by him? This is something the Youth Parliament probably aware of. The Duke of Edinburgh's award has helped people out of the most extraordinary difficulties, and he was inspired to do this by his own terrible childhood. I mean, it couldn't have been more challenging. Many of us would have collapsed under that weight, but he just said, nope, that's what's happened and I'll just get on with it. And that was where he was a tremendous support to the Queen when things happened like the fire. And he you know, whenever there was a disaster, I think that strong, don't buckle, you know, get on with it, solve it, deal with it, was a good inspiration for adults and for children. And he did have quite a connection with our borough, as already been mentioned in Imperial College, and also he was one of the presidents of the Hurlingham Club for 63 years. And as a light-hearted point I make, he came down to us one time and everyone was rushing to try and talk to him. So we stood away. We thought, no, that's ridiculous. And all of a sudden, there he was coming straight to us. He stopped and said, he said, hello, you lot. Everything comes to him who waits. And I said, and well worth waiting for, sir. And he waved to me and winked and rushed off. And there was that feeling of sort of energy and humour, which I saw again when I was mayor and we were invited to the Queen's Jubilee celebrations in 2012. A dinner was held for all the boroughs, a luncheon. And he was there talking to people, and then our table happened to be extremely close to the royal table. While we were sitting down, along came the waitresses and said to him, sir, sparkling or still? And he replied, sparkling or still? What? And they said, well, water, sir. Water, he said. I only use that for washing in. And the girls ran away petrified. And immediately somebody arrived and rescued the situation, putting a bottle of beer, which was his favourite one, which is opened, but the cap has to be left on. And he said, he said, that's a bit more like it, and poured it out. And everybody, this is where he broke the ice. And everybody relaxed and laughed. And I watched the Queen's face. It was an absolute study. I think she found that he was brilliant at suddenly sparking a bit of, I think, just sort of everybody relaxing and enjoying themselves instead of feeling terrified that they were sitting there in such an important time with such important people. They suddenly realised here's somebody with a huge sense of fun. And that whole lunch was great, great fun. And we could admire him on so many different levels. And as I think both of you have said so far, we learnt after he died, as you so often do at funerals, how much more there was to the person than you actually knew. Absolutely amazing range of service and detail and inspiration he gave to everyone. So that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any other people who wish to speak? Thank you very much. We'll now hold a minute's silence in his memory. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to Coyote for the picture there. It's very moving. It's also with much regret that I have to inform everyone of the death of Alderman Michael Cartwright, who was formerly the Mayor and Deputy Leader of the Council, who died peacefully on Monday the 12th of April after a long illness. Joining us tonight on YouTube, I think his sister is joining us, as are two of his closest friends, George and James, Andy Slaughter, the MP, and also Rosemary Mortimer, who was his Lady Mayoress. And she's just asked us to say how honoured and privileged she was to serve with him. On behalf of all of us here, to his friends, to his family, to those that knew him, please accept our condolences. You'll have the comfort tonight of hearing just how much Mike was loved and respected and admired. Understandably, from fellow councillors, I've had many requests to speak, and for very obvious reasons, I'll not invoke the 5-minute rule. If you don't mind, I'll speak first, not in my role as Mayor, but as fellow ward councillor. That'll be followed by Councillor Cowan for the administration and Councillor Brown for the opposition, and then I'll invite anyone who wishes to speak to do so. I don't want to speak for too long, as the pleasure, about the pleasure I have of Mike, and he heard many of the things that I wanted to say when he became an alderman and was granted freedom of the borough. But I don't want to speak for too long also because, like many others, I'm cut up by his death. And his death really brought home to Mary and I just how much we loved him. He was all the things you'd want in a friend: kind, empathetic, insightful, honest, funny, but most importantly of all, a genuine person. Simply put, he's the nicest man I've ever met. He was loved and respected across this chamber, regardless of his political affiliation or anyone's political affiliation, and also by the officers, but more importantly, by the residents. When my local residents association, which is in Mike's ward, were informed about his death, I was stopped so many times in the streets and local shops by people expressing their appreciation. And just last week, being outside by local butchers, one of the residents said she heard a rumour that Mike had died and asked if it was true. And she was effusive in her respect for him. Before I fall into the trap of eulogising Mike to the point of statehood, he did have one or two well-known idiosyncrasies. He once told me he could at times be determined, and I informed him that was a typical Mike understatement, because I found him to be as stubborn as a mule and as immovable as a rock at times. He just smiled. He's the only person I know who bought an oven and never owned it or never used it. He owned no cookbooks. While cook, he thought, when having an unused oven, you have a perfectly functioning microwave. And looking at him, you'd never guess he loved his food, and he had a strong allergy to exercise. As with all terrific people, he had a wonderful sense of humour. And whilst we as Labour members frequently took the mick out of him, he wasn't slow to take the mick out of himself as well. One of my favourite memories, I think, was when the Conservatives were in power and brought in charges for personal trainers to use the park. And Steve illustrated what we consider to be the idiocy of this by claiming he was going to register as a personal trainer and take a bike out running and exercising in Ravenscourt Park. The look of horror on Mike's face was a picture. I thought he was having a heart attack. We might have to call the paramedics. He chuns on about it for quite some time afterwards, reliving this appalling slight with wry amusement and, I think, thankfulness that Steve didn't pursue the idea any further. I guess you only tease the ones you love. When I was elected in 2010, he had the unenviable task of mentoring me. And I guess in that, I'm living proof that in some things, he completely failed. When Mary and I last spoke to Mike, it had, of course, to be via Skype, which is never ideal, and he could only really communicate with his eyes. They still had that twinkle and sparkle. They still rolled with shock and horror as we told him what was going on, and he still had that wonderful smile. Hammersmith and Fulham, Mary and I, have benefited greatly from Mike's life, and is now all the emptier with his death. I'll try and get a bit more in control, and I'll invite Councillor for the Leader of the Council, Stephen Cowan, to say a few words.
Well, I think Councillor Stainton said something quite poignant a couple of minutes ago when talking about Prince Philip, when she said, when she referred to a good life, what is a good life? I guess all of us ponder that when we try and think about the difference we might make on the society and the world we love. For Mike, he had a very clear answer, and that answer was duty. He'd actually become a councillor when he was, I think, 23. He'd been asked by the local Labour Party in Ipswich if he would, and he became, I think, a county councillor there in Suffolk as well. And so he was elected in Hammersmith and Fulham in 1992. And he wasn't just elected, he sat on almost every committee, which was an epitome, really, of his sense of duty. And there's no, I think all of us in the chamber know, there's no glory in being a councillor, there's no money in being a councillor. You know, you do it out of the beliefs that you have. And Mike fundamentally believed that if you wanted to make a difference, stepping up, a bit as Marley said in his speech earlier, and Scarlett mentioned the same thing as well, stepping up and taking part, that's how you make the difference. And sometimes it's turgid and you're in a quiet, cold, dusty room working through a planning meeting, or you're, as Mike did for 23 years, or you're on a licensing committee, as Mike was for 2 decades, or you're a cabinet member, as Mike was, or you're the at London councils arguing for the Freedom Pass, as Mike did when he was chair of tech for all of London. None of that stuff gets in the newspapers, but he did it because he cared. And just looking at his CV, Alderman is a huge honour, an honour that I know was so important to him, that he'd been given that by the borough, and the freedom of the borough as well. Mayor, he wanted to be the mayor, he held the mayoral position in great reverence and wanted, as he was retiring, to spend a year as the mayor. He wanted to do it much earlier, actually, and I pleaded with him to stay on as deputy leader to help embed the administration, not least because he was a well of wisdom, having served on all of those different committees for such a long time. He was an amazing deputy leader of the opposition. The things he would find out, the things we would do together, meant that he was formidable. And the number of people who learned to love him because they would come to him either via their surgeries or with a problem that he would get involved with. They learned to love him because he was diligent and hardworking and not that political in the way he dealt with people. He was a magistrate. He was horrified to see that often the people who most lose out in the law are the people who are most voiceless. And therefore, and he was most upset when he learned, having dealt with so many pieces of casework with domestic violence at the heart of it, he thought it was intolerable at a time when, in those days, when the police would often class something as a domestic. So when he became a magistrate, he made a point of prioritising domestic violence. And indeed, it was part of an administration that set up a real change in the way the police argued domestic violence should be dealt with, which the Labour government, when it came into office in 1997, I say 1997, it gives you an idea how long he served for, used as a blueprint for changing the law nationally. So, and as a magistrate, he made sure that women got the service they needed and were protected, and that their voice was made more equal at a time when it just never was seen to be. So I love him. I still love him. You know, he was a raconteur. He could tell a story about something that you may have missed in a meeting and make it sound like the funniest thing you ever heard, and you would sit holding your belly laughing. He continuously, worried me because he wasn't the healthiest person, and I used to encourage him. Not that I was in any fit pace to do it, to live a healthier life. Kim was telling me recently, Kim Smith, the chief executive, that there'd been a birthday and someone had brought in a cake, and everyone had had a slice of cake. And then I was out at a meeting, and he said to Kim, "What time's Steve back?" And she's like, "Oh, he's not back for another 20 minutes." And he went, "Great, let's have another couple of slices of cake." The biggest smiles I ever saw on his face was when he was eating cream donuts or other cakes of that nature. He loved food and enjoyed it very much. But actually, food for him was part of being with his friends and telling stories and sharing happiness, which is what Mike really was about. I remember Rosemary Mortimer, formerly Rosemary Pettit, phoning me when Mike had said to me he would like her to be the mayoress. And she was, "But I'm not a Labour politician. I'm not even in the Labour Party." In fact, she was in another party at the time. I don't know what her political affiliation. We honestly don't care about any of that. He just thinks she'd be perfect at the job, and as we all know, she was. And they made quite a team together. He was just the most wonderful person. I don't believe we'd had the opposition we had without Mike. I don't believe we'd had the administration we have. So when we look at the fact that he took great pleasure in saving Charing Cross Hospital. The times he worked, the papers he read. He took huge pleasure in abolishing home care charges when we came into office, because he knew what it meant to old people and disabled people who couldn't get care or had to find themselves being remortgaged for a house, possibly when they were suffering dementia. He was really worried about kids and urged us to introduce 3 breakfasts, which we did. And he was determined when he came in, but we found 6 million quid to put the largest number of council funded police on the borough streets in history, which was his big thing. He was like, who get most hurt by crime? People least able to protect themselves. And so that was one of his real tributes. And he argued that forcefully in cabinet. And afterwards, when obviously I backed him, he came, took me aside and said, "Thank you so much. You don't realise how much this means to me, to be able to say I'm keeping people safe," which he did. He was just an amazing man, and his friends, John Penn and Graham Simmons, we're all devastated, and I've got to know them through this really. His sister Patricia and Stephen, his brother-in-law Stephen Chalmers are on the call. His nephew Craig Cartwright has emailed me, but and so we send our condolences to all of them and share our grief with them. But most importantly, the number of residents who contacted me, just saying what a beautiful man he was, and he really was. So it's not easy being in public life, as we see. It's certainly hard sometimes to sit and do the work and get in all the meetings, late at night, arguing something on a planning case, a licensing case, a committee. But Mike was there all the time doing that. He put the work in. He was the epitome of duty. And I'd ask him about it, because if you sit opposite someone for 11 years, which I did, we'd talk about all the important things. We'd also talk about all the ridiculous things and what, how did we want things to be and whatever else would cross our minds. It was very, and he would always say the same thing: making a difference with your life, making it better, making the world a little bit better because you existed. That's what he thought was important, and that's what he spent his life doing. And I know there are thousands and thousands of people, most will never know Mike's name, whose lives are better because he existed. And for that, I am profoundly grateful on behalf of the people of the borough for Mike's deep service to this borough, this great city of ours in London, and indeed to our country and everything that he did.
Thank you.
How much?
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to you and also the leader of the council for both of your incredibly emotional and heartfelt tributes to Alderman Mike Cartwright. Can I first, pay Mike sincere condolences, and of course those of the entire Conservative group, to firstly his family and close friends, but also to the Labour group in Hammersmith and Fulham. I'm not just saying this out of duty or obligation, or because it's the right thing for the leader of another political party to say. I didn't know Mike for as long or as closely, obviously, as the two previous speakers, but at every opportunity when I did interact with him, most memorably for me at planning committee, when I had the misfortune of becoming vice chairman, knowing virtually nothing about planning, and Mike managed to either completely scupper my arguments, or on many occasions actually we agreed with each other on certain aspects. But he was always great fun as well at those committees. And I know that many other speakers are going to speak about Mike from both sides of the chamber, but from the anecdotes and the stories that I've heard from my colleagues, he was a truly great man as the leader of the council, but very movingly laid out. And I thought, of all the things that we do in this council chamber, and some of them are very important, some of them in full council can be rather ridiculous, and the two political parties shouting at each other about a minutiae on a point that we virtually agree on everything except one thing, or we can't agree because of politics. But one of the things that most strikes me about all my I think it's, how many years now is it? 7 years, no more than that, however many years, 9 years in the chamber. One of the most moving episodes was elevating Mike to the rank of alderman and giving him the freedom of the borough. And having that privilege to be able to there, to see the honour that he felt and the pride that he felt to receive that, and the slightly bashful, listening to all the stories praising him, was it really was a fantastic moment, and one that we can be proud of on all sides of the chamber. I'm going to wrap up now and hand over to other colleagues on both sides. But I just want to again pay my condolences to his family and friends, and thank you, Mike, for everything you've done and being such a great chap. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ahern.
It was with great sadness that I was told of the death of Mike Cartwright after a long illness. I had managed to speak to him on Skype, but that's not the same as meeting in person, is it? Strangely enough, that week, lockdown restrictions had just eased, and I was in the process of arranging to go and visit him. But alas, I was too late. It seems only 5 minutes ago that Mike attended the meeting of the council when he was given the freedom of the borough and appointed an honorary alderman in recognition of his outstanding service to the people of this borough. And he told me how honoured and proud he felt at being given such accolades. On that happy occasion, I shared many amusing anecdotes about him, which I won't repeat tonight. I will just say that I was always impressed by his lifetime commitment to public service that went over and beyond the call of duty. For instance, there were many occasions when we left the town hall late at night after an intense meeting to go across the road to the pub to have a drink to wind down, and one of his constituents would spot him and come over and start telling him about all his problems. After a while, I'd go over and try and rescue him, but to no avail. because Mike always said that as far as he was concerned, he was on duty 24/7 for his constituents. Finally, I'd like to say it has been an honour and a privilege to be a friend and comrade of Mike's for well over 30 years. And although he is gone, he will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ahern. Councillor Harcourt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, like the other speakers, I'd like to pass on my condolences to Mike's family and to his friends. I first met Mike Cartwright way back in 1992 when he was standing for election in Hammersmith Broadway ward in a by-election, and I was asked by the party to take photos of him for his election address. And I can remember walking around the Thames path along the river with him and with the then councillor Jackie Abbott in the failing early evening light, trying to get a decent photo of them with the Hammersmith Bridge in the background. And that's one of my earliest memories and one that I've never forgotten. I was elected a couple of years later, and I sat with Mike on the planning committee, as others have mentioned, till he stood down at the last election in 2018. Mike's knowledge, experience and input as a chartered surveyor was absolutely invaluable on that committee. For instance, he was the only member who was able to actually assess the viability statements that developers have been putting in, and that was so closely guarded that he had to be escorted by security into an office, watched while he read the report, made sure that he didn't copy anything or even make notes, and then came back out and reported to us. Amazing that he could do that. Mike was always a very calm person, a very calming influence. And again, at planning committee, I can remember on one occasion when things were getting really quite heated. And one member, I won't say who, referred to him, and I think I better paraphrase this, as a stupid old fool. And he managed to diffuse the situation quite simply by saying, "Do you mind? Less of the old, please." Mike held the Environment and Highways brief for many years, and his willingness to share that knowledge and experience with me has been absolutely invaluable as I took over that brief. He also served on the Western Riverside Waste Authority board for many years, and he was never afraid to voice his opinion on the governance of the body or the way the contract was being run. His ability and diligence, I suppose is the correct word, in researching the contractor. He was able to give the board insight into the way things were working and the rationale behind the way the contractors were trying to make things work. As I said, he was never afraid of voicing his opinion, either at Western Riverside or on the planning committee. But even beyond that, on one occasion, he even threatened to take direct action when officers told him it would take 6 months to remove a yellow line. He threatened to go out, buy a pot of black paint and paint it out himself. So, however, on a more personal level, I should always remember the evenings in the salutation with Mike and with Colin over there after planning committee, or when we occasionally would go to lunch together and we'd sit around discussing the good old days. And it just always reminded me that we were like the three old boys in the last of the summer wine. It was really sad. I was really, really sad when Mike's physical health deteriorated. Even though his his health and his mind was as sharp as ever. One of the things that I recall was the worry I had when I was walking down those marble stairs in Wandsworth Town Hall after a Western Riverside Waste Authority meeting, scared stiff that Mike was going to trip and fall down those stairs, or that when we were trying to, on our way back home to get the bus, we'd have to cross the Wandsworth one-way system, and I was worried sick we'd get halfway across before the green man would change to red, and it was dreadful, really. I hadn't heard, like others, I hadn't heard or seen anything of Mike since the lockdown, until I heard that he was in palliative care. And luckily, I managed to arrange a Skype call, again with Colin, a week or so before he passed away. I have to say that was one of the most dreadfully upsetting experiences I've ever had. Seeing Mike in the state where he seemed to hear and understand what we were saying, but was barely able to say anything back or respond. I don't think it would be fair for me to say, and I hope Colin doesn't mind me saying this, we were both left traumatised after that to see our friend and colleague a mere shadow of the person we knew. Rest in peace, Mike. God bless.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Alford. Is Ronnie Alford?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I would like to pay my condolences to Mike's family and friends. He was a remarkable man, and I was privileged to serve with him. I know I was on the opposite side, but he was a true councillor. He served and it had a sense of duty which few have had. He was very wise. I know all of this has already been said, but I can only reiterate that I found him an amazing man to work with, an amazing councillor to serve with. He was unstinting in what he did for his residents, his belief in his residents, and his duty to them. They were truly privileged to have him as a councillor. As you will all know, and as I referred to when he was made alderman, Mike and I served for many years together on the Mortlake Crematorium Board. Now his stewardship of that board when he was chairman has left it in the good stead to deal with this terrible pandemic. He put in good procedures and he recruited and held the most excellent staff. I think that their morale and their work throughout this pandemic is just a tribute to Mike. He is so fondly remembered by them, and we always speak about him. And throughout his past few months, I have been regularly asked by them how he is and if there was anything they could do. I sadly didn't see him, but he was always in my thoughts. For many years, when Mike was on the crematorium board, I used to drive him to the crematoria. So we had quite an enjoyable trip, usually negotiating the Great Road to get there and making quite sure I didn't get to go too fast and get a speeding ticket. And we would discuss the vagaries of the council, but always in confidence. I can only say that he was, again, a very, very good mayor for this borough. He showed all the good aspects of being a mayor, and he was not self-seeking and he didn't do it for self-promotion. He did it because he truly believed in it and truly wished to serve his borough. Both he and his mayoress were exemplary. I can only end this tribute by saying that I have lost a very dear friend, as many other people have, and that I hope and pray that all is well and that he goes to his final resting place at our beloved crematorium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Alford. Councillor Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for inviting me to speak in tribute of Alderman Michael Cartwright. This evening, I want to pay a special tribute to Mike, an exemplary colleague, councillor, mentor, and friend. I fondly remember volunteering and campaigning for our local Labour Party in early 2010. My first ever canvassing and door-knocking experience was with Mike around the streets of Hammersmith Broadway. I shadowed him on various occasions. I had the opportunity to listen and learn from the conversations that he had with local residents and the issues that were raised and needed following up. I had the opportunity and privilege to see him in action, his response, engagement, passion, and interest, which made it evident to me that Mike was a good man, passionate about the local community he served and represented. Learning from Mike and his compassionate and diligent work inspired me to want to get more involved with my local community and borough here in Hammersmith. When I started my journey in local politics and first got elected as a councillor in 2014, representing the residents of Shepherd Bush Green Ward, I received mentorship from Mike, which I will always remember and cherish. Mike was a fantastic mentor with patience, kindness, and generosity, providing me with support, guidance, tools, and feedback that enabled me to better understand the role and the responsibilities that come with being a councillor. His support has guided me through my role in planning, licensing, and the governing role with the Board of Governors at the Armenian and Sacred Heart Primary Catholic School. Mike was also my friend, a friend I approached for personal advice. I always found his calm manner grounding and reassuring. Whenever I think of the principles of public office, I think Mike epitomized this: selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. Mike's work impacted many in our community, and his legacy will transcend decades to come. Mike, you are sadly missed as a colleague, counselor, mentor, and friend. My deepest condolences to family and friends. Your memory and legacy will always be present. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Andrew Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I don't want to say many things, but a few things to add to everything that's been said so far, and join with my colleagues with great sadness at Mike's passing, and to emphasise in what is for me not as long as some, but 2 decades of having known Mike, the gigantic contribution that he made to civic life in this borough. Now, I first met Mike in around the council election of 2002 when I was a freshly elected councillor in Fulham Broadway, and I remember from that time quite rapidly realising both Mike's sense of humour and his enormous knowledge and experience. He didn't have much time, as I recall, quite often for the boisterous rhetoric, as others have said sometimes in the council chamber. But what I did notice, whenever Mike stood up, everybody in the chamber or in the meeting, or wherever we were, started listening, because he intervened with gravitas, with experience, and with a great deal of knowledge, which Steve has talked about, based on many years of experience, but more importantly, based on such amount of work in reading every paper, in attending every meeting, in that duty that we've been talking about. But my fondest memories of Mike, really, I suppose, are from the time when he was the backbone of that Labour group in our period of opposition and then administration in more recent times, where, as Steve said, he brought that weight of experience into how we could get things done, how we could make the administration a success when we came in. Now, I had many conversations with Mike also, some of which the leader knows about in his office of old, but many of which he doesn't know about because he wasn't there. And Mike, with a twinkle in his eye, would say, because perhaps sometimes, as he was then the leader of the opposition, was quite distracted, he would leave, and then Mike would say, well, now we can get down to talking about the issues, and I'll explain what I've already told Steve, and you can maybe tell him later, in case he wasn't listening. And this is when Mike came, I think, you know, that sense of duty, that sense of detail. He'd be the person talking about, have you read paragraph X on page 148 of this report, which says this? And of course I hadn't read this, and probably few people had. Perhaps an officer had written it some time ago, and that's where he had pulled it apart and found out the truth of the matter in whatever we were engaging, whether we had to oppose something, whether something was going wrong or in administration, whether there'd been an oversight or there was a risk. And these were often matters easily overlooked, which often were really, really important to that unwieldy business we have in local government. They were sometimes big things, planning applications, as we've talked about, but there were also small things, things that really would make a difference to the lives of residents, but we in this chamber, in this meeting, don't always pick up on, and which the council would have carried on and undertaken to the detriment of people's lives. That could be a badly designed traffic junction or an ill-conceived licence for a hostelry that he didn't feel should be open for so long, which was a particular area of his concern. So it's rare that I disagree with the leader of the council, but I do want to disagree with him by way of ending on one thing. He said that he thought there were thousands of people in this borough who had been touched by the life of Mike Cartwright, who never knew his name. Well, in my experience from back to the 2000s, there were many, many residents in this borough, some of whom we've never encountered anybody here who knew his name, because, as Colin said, he was there 24/7 for his constituents. He was there, I learned when I was a councillor in Fulham, 24/7 for my constituents as well. He was there for everybody He worked all the time in that sense of duty we've talked about. So I just want to pay my own respect to that gigantic contribution he made to this borough over such a long period of time, and before that in other parts of the country, and send my sincerest condolences to his family and friends. I will always remember Mike with great fondness and miss those conversations we had, particularly the ones in the leader's office when the leader wasn't there, where he came into his own and he became my friend. And I really will spend many times in the future thinking about Mike with deep affection. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Carmel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I did have a little speech planned, but listening to the previous contributions, I'm going to wing it. Can I first start by saying that when I was mayor, I had to deliver eulogy to what was quite frankly my best friend, which was former councillor Anthony Lillis. And there was cross-party agreement about what a great councillor Anthony was. Non-party political, and even the MP Lisa Nandy spoke in favour of honouring the work that Anthony did over the years. And I believe that Mike is an absolutely similar character for praise along the lines of Anthony. And I have to say that in one of the last meetings that we held at Fulham Town Hall, which we deliberately did as an administration to honour Anthony, because he was a Fulham lad, born and bred, we absolutely cross-party praised his dedication to the people of Hammersmith and Fulham. And Mike is just entirely in that ilk. He was absolutely non-party political when it came to serving the people of this borough. And it is with great sadness that I speak on this matter. Mike was a model of stoicism during his long and, as he knew, terminal illness. And he bore it with indomitable courage. Mike, we made an honorary alderman. He was able to hear a plethora of tributes. Too few people facing death have the opportunity to hear. I'm sorry, Mayor. Too few people have an opportunity to hear tributes afforded to themselves. And if with your permission, if I may digress a little, Mayor, it brings to mind the famous circus showman, P.T. Barnum, who, aside from holding his world-famous circus in the borough at the former Empress Hall on Lily Road, later, and unbeknown to many people, became a mayor in his case. It was in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where he was lying on his deathbed, waiting for the inevitable. But he requested that he had the opportunity to read his obituary before he died. I feel that the aldermanic election ceremony that we held for him somewhat mirrored this, and Mike was able to hear the tributes to the fantastic work that he paid not only to this borough, but also to his constituents in Ipswich and in Suffolk. I won't repeat all the praise that I gave him at that meeting when we elevated him to the aldermanic elections, but I and others made fulsome praise of his contribution, not only to this borough, but elsewhere in the country. But I will just express a heartfelt sorrow at his parting. Hammersmith and Fulham will miss his extremely dedicated service, as will I. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carmel. Councillor Vaughan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me the privilege of speaking on the passing of Mike Cartwright. First of all, can I, along with echoing others, send my deepest condolences to his family and friends. Obviously, a lot of his friends are the ones speaking and in this meeting tonight. There's obviously been a huge range of tributes paid tonight, so I'll sort of cut to the ones that I think most sum up Mike. I think I had the privilege of serving alongside him as a Labour councillor from 2006. And as many people have said, he was basically a dedicated public servant, sitting on, as others have recalled, all manner of committees, working hard for his constituents, both here and when he at an earlier stage in Ipswich and in Suffolk. And again, on some of the more unfashionable committees, as has been recounted earlier on, I think he took great pride and has and did a great job. The job that's been recounted by Councillor Alford earlier, for example, in sitting on the Mortlake Crematorium Board and making a success of that. And I hope that he will get the send-off that he deserves from them in just a week or so's time. I'd also like to echo, though, the fact that a problem in some cases is that we don't get to sing the praises of those who have dedicated their lives to public service with such aplomb. And I too was also glad to be able to pay my tributes to him when we did have that meeting to give him both the freedom of the borough and to make him an honorary alderman. It was fitting that someone who had held such important posts and had dedicated so much of their time and so much of their life to the service of this borough, that we were able to pay our tributes there. People, as I think I said at the time, who worked diligently for the public in all manner of difficult, unfashionable circumstances, often are, end up being the unsung heroes. So I was really glad that we were able to pay the tributes and to sing the praises of Mike at that meeting. And I'm glad to hear that he was so touched and held that, the importance of our paying those tributes to him. He will certainly be much missed by me and others, and we will certainly be worse off for his lack of influence. There was a saying, I think it was in a very different context, which we can think about as local councillors back in the 80s and 90s, that I want to be like Mike. And I think that as local councillors dedicated hopefully to public service, I think that's something that we should think about and seek to aspire to as much as possible. So I'll leave you on that, which is I want to be like Mike as a dedicated public servant, and I hope that those of us in this virtual chamber tonight will consider that too as an aspiration, and we thank him for all that he gave to this borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Have I gone to Councillor Ume?
Thank you, Mayor. My sincere sympathy and condolence to Mike's family and his friends. Mike was a great mentor, not only to me, but to many other people in this community. As Albert Einstein said, the value of a man should be seen in what he gives and not in what he's able to receive. In other words, Mike was a man who gave to the community and was supportive to everyone who knew him. When I was elected mayor of the borough, I had to choose a charity. And I invited a lupus consultant from a rheumatoid unit at Hammersmith Hospital. Mike was graciously supported me with this by offering them free use of council hall for the consultants to use anytime for raising awareness of the disease, rather than them finding another venue to use where they have to pay fees. Mike informed the consultant that since they are mayor's charity, they do not have to pay. And Mike instructed the council staff to book a hall for them anytime they want to use it. I could see a big smile on the consultants' faces. On personal notes, Mike was very supportive to me when I was first elected as a councillor in 2002. He helped me in one occasion when a couple wanted to convert their roof terrace for personal health related reasons, and the council refused because they didn't meet the requirements. Fortunately, it was through Mike's advice that I was able to solve this problem, which helped the couple immensely. It was a privilege to work with Mike, and I know that Mike had a tremendous impact on everyone who knew him. As a community, we will miss Mike very much. I personally will miss him. Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Brocklebank-Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My condolences. I would really like to talk about Mike's role in licensing, as this is where we really got to know each other. Between 2008 and 2012, we heard 138 licensing hearings to sort out the effects of the 2003 Licensing Act on our borough. We never disagreed over our final decisions. His dedication to this quasi-judicial function is self-evident. It was honed, I believe, in part by his additional experience as a magistrate. Hearings were often long, and although our favoured start time was 10 a.m, this included, for example, one sitting at 9 p.m. on a Friday night in Fulham Town Hall. It's important to say that we were correct in our decisions. Only one of those 143 judgments was upheld on appeal, and that was not even an alcohol licence. The public spirit which Mike exhibited and the dedication to licensing was why I admired him. He was also kind. At the count, on the night I lost my seat in 2014, he sought me out to commiserate and genuinely and generously expressed his personal sadness, which was an extremely remarkable gesture, whilst himself in the thrill of winning the council. Similarly, I was very pleased that he was chosen to be mayor in his last year as a councillor, and I was delighted to see him again at the annual council in 2018. He welcomed me with his big, broad smile and beckoned me over. Given his natural generosity, he welcomed me back, saying, "I'm really so pleased that you're here again." He was the kind of public servant which is all too rare, but stands out when seen and met. He will be missed.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to give my condolences to my friend's family and to colleagues here tonight. I've been very moved and very touched by what I've been hearing about my predecessor, and quite a hard act to follow by all accounts. I first met Mike over 20 years ago at a local community event. And it was the first time that I met him, along with Steve, the leader. And I've been thinking about, since I heard about his passing, about that first meeting. And what I keep coming back to was that I was standing between these physically two giants. Now, I know we haven't been in chamber for well over a year, so I would just like to remind colleagues that I'm 4'4" and a little something, and quite a low voice. So, and I just remember Mike's smile and that twinkle in his eyes. And I've been very touched, Mr. Mayor, by what you said about Mike. And I would just like to reassure you that the one thing that I can say with hand on my heart that I can follow him in is I don't like cooking. I like to use the microwave. So that will continue. And wherever you are, Mike, whether you're looking up or looking down, please know that you are a very well-loved person, a thoroughly decent chap. And I'm going away tonight with the words, I want to be like Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Kwan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My colleagues across the chamber who've worked with Mike Cartwright for much longer than I have really spoken about how much of an example he was a public servant. The reason I wanted to speak is there's actually one duty he performed that hasn't been mentioned in any of the published tributes. Before he stepped down as a councillor, he was actually for many years a governor at Flora Garden School, a school that I'm lucky enough to be a governor at now. And the senior leadership team at the school and the governing body wanted to just publicly record that he was a vice chair a vice chair governor there at a time of great transition at that school. And I think the reason it's been missed off, or the written tributes, is Mike was involved in so many things, and he was on so many committees, and I think he was a governor at many schools, but they did say that if there was an opportunity, they would really like to publicly just acknowledge the work that he did, and the sort of absolute support he gave to this school, which it's a gem in our ward. But there was a period of transition, and he was really a sort of a rock at that time. So yes, just on behalf of the school, Flora Gardens Primary School, we just wanted to extend our thanks to Mike's work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I just take this chance to congratulate you, Mr. Mayor, on your appointment as Mayor and the consequent increase in your stature. Can I add my condolences to families and friends? I'd like to take you back to a council by-election in the early 1990s. Two members of this current council were councillors in 1990, but to many others, the early 90s may seem a very different time, and indeed, some of you here may not even have been born. But in fact, it was actually not so different. Then, like today, Hammersmith and Fulham had a strong Labour administration run by a formidable leader. In 1990, that was Ian Coleman. Then, like today, we had a Tory government, a government that was becoming engulfed in sleaze. And then, like today, we had excellent Labour councillors in Hammersmith Broadway. And almost 29 years ago, to this day, one of those excellent councillors, Ken Burleton, resigned his seat in order to get married and move to North London. So in Hammersmith Broadway, we faced a by-election and had to find a candidate. Luckily, a relatively new member of our ward stepped forward. In the selection meeting, it soon became clear to the members that he was an excellent candidate. He brought experience, having served as a councillor on Ipswich Borough Council, and had a strong grasp of local issues. And he was a nice guy. Whilst I cannot claim that during the by-election campaign, our candidate always ran all the way up to the 7th floor of Ashcroft Square, he was a hard-working and astute candidate. Election day was on 16th of July 1992. Our candidate deservedly took 42% of the vote, sweeping aside his Tory opponent, the rather strangely named Toby Vincent. In 1994, our councillor held Hammersmith Broadway. As a popular and effective councillor, won the seat 7 times, and he served his community with distinction. During his years on the council, I think that we can all agree that our Hammersmith Broadway councillor became a more substantial local figure as the years passed. As mayor, alderman, magistrate, school governor, planner, stalwart of the Labour Party, and wise friend. And, not forgetting, his humour and his love of talk, his love of politics, his love of travel, his love of fine food, and of course, his love of Hammersmith and Fulham. Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And the last speaker I have down now is Councillor Fenimore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving me the opportunity to talk a little about Mike. What we've heard tonight is an absolutely extraordinary tribute to one of the nicest, kindest, decentest human beings I've ever had the privilege of working with and calling my friend. Mike and I shared a cheeky sense of humour, let's put it like that. And he was a wonderful educator, he was a mentor, and he was just all-round caring, compassionate human being. I do remember one time in the early days when I became a councillor in 2014, when I said to him, Mike, I don't know how this place works. And he looked at me and he said, with a real cheeky grin on his face, because boy, that grin and that lovely smile carried through. He said to me, my dear, I've been here a very long time and I still don't know how this place works. The reality of the truth of that was not true. He absolutely knew how this place worked, but what he was doing and what he kindly was doing to me was trying to encourage me, support me, and not scare me in what was a very, very new place for me to be. I hadn't been a councillor before in 2014, and I'd been honoured and been given the privilege of standing as a cabinet member at that time. But he was there gently behind the scenes, just supporting me. And I am hugely grateful to Mike for championing me to the point where he encouraged me and actually nominated me to be deputy leader. And I follow Mike. There's no way I can fill those shoes, not least because I have 3.5 size feet and his shoes are giant, more than giant in size, but in stature. And I really, really will miss him. My humble and warm condolences to his family. It's a very sad time. I feel personally very sad that we won't have Mike with us, but I know that the residents of Hammersmith and Fulham are in a much better place than they ever would have been had Mike not stood and dedicated his life to the tributes and to the challenges that residents face in this borough. So not only am I sad, but I'm hugely grateful personally to all the support that he gave me, but also to the support that he gave the residents of Hammersmith and Fulham. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And thank you everyone who spoke. I see Councillor Frances Staten has her hand up. Please go ahead, Councillor.
I just want to do a very quick tribute to him as well. I know I've been given the privilege to talk once, but I want to say that Mike Cartwright was really one of the best, and my heart goes out to his family for losing him and all his friends. And when I say all his friends, we probably don't know quite how many he had because they just keep coming from every angle. So God bless him for setting a standard for all councillors to aspire to. And I certainly enjoyed serving, even though it was in opposition to him, because he was always so fair and he could argue very convincingly about things, and he didn't mind if you stood up to him. He knew it wasn't being rude or just having an argument, and he had that with great gusto. But what I remember particularly was when he became mayor, I went in to congratulate him at the lovely party we had afterwards, and I'm sorry we can't have one now for the current mayor, because it really was a wonderful way for everyone to get to know him. And I said that I'd very much enjoyed being mayor, to my utter amazement, because I thought, I was very reluctant. I said, I don't want to just sit in the back of a car in chains being dragged about to open and shut things and photographed and given bunches of flowers. It'll be boring. And my leader then, who was Stephen Greenhouse, said, nonsense, you'll do it very well. But I looked at Mike and he was twinkling, and I could see he was thinking something on those lines. And I said, really, don't worry, because from the morning to the evening, you will be taken to a range of experiences you never dreamed of. You'll meet such a wide spectrum of people, and you get endless opportunities to achieve things, which I knew was one of his big driving ambitions. And I said, you'll really, really enjoy it. And he grinned again and nodded and said, good, well, that's good news. So that was really my little tribute to him. I really don't want to talk long because I know we've got a meeting ahead of us, but thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Somehow I think that when we can meet in person, there'll be a few arms raised holding some glasses in memory of someone that we all love very, very dearly. And as you're aware, there is a book of condolences, which I think will give great comfort to his family and friends. And if you haven't already entered your thoughts, please feel free to do so. I'd like now for us all to observe a minute's silence in the memory of Alderman Michael Cartwright.
You're on mute, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed, and my apologies for that. I was on mute. I think many of you are probably glad I was on mute, but I'm sorry, I'm now back on live. So we're on item 7, which is the committee reports, and it's item 7.1, the party appointments for the 2021-22 municipal year. The council is requested to note the reports on the appointments made by the party groups on the council for 2021-22. The opposition appointments are subject to the outcome of their party's AGM. Councillor Ahern, do the Labour Group note the reports of the appointments made by the party groups of the council for 2021-22?
Agreed.
Councillor Carmel, do the Conservative Group note the report on the appointments made by the party groups on the council for 2021-22?
The opposition group duly note.
Thank you, Councillor. Item 7.2, appointments by the leader of the deputy leader and cabinet. And before we move on to that, Councillor Cowan would like to say a few words. Councillor Cowan?
He's on mute. He's on mute.
I think you got a touch of the PJs and you're on mute, I'm afraid, Councillor.
Yes. Thank you. I would like to just say a few words about Councillor Fulham, who is stepping down as the Cabinet Member for Strategy, and to thank her on behalf of the borough and indeed the Labour administration and the council. Sue turned up in Hammersmith and Fulham. She'd worked at the Labour Party. She had no intention of getting involved in the local Hammersmith Labour Party, and within a couple of years found herself chair of the Hammersmith Labour Party and was a key ally in making sure that we had a party that was electable, that was true to our social democratic beliefs. And that would be a legacy enough for anybody, given that one of the reasons we were propelled into office in 2014. But very quickly, Sue was the right person to become the Cabinet Member for Children and Education. And what Sue did in turning that department, which was the biggest objection we had at the time, was we don't work for you, we work for the Tri-Borough. And we would say, but we've got this manifesto. And they'd like, yes, we'll get to that at some point. But meanwhile, and that's how that was essentially that early stage. We inherited the SEN transport service, which was a disaster, and put children's lives at risk. And cutting through that and making sure that we sorted out SEN, but also changed the emphasis of the children's department so that the highest priority for us became children and young people, not the budget. Clearly, the budget was important. We were determined it would be brought in within budgetary constraints. But actually, what we were most interested in and what Sue epitomised was really the outcomes. So when we generated large amounts of money from negotiation with developers, some of that was very quickly recycled into the Stephen Wiltshire Centre, a centre that specifically supports disabled children with learning difficulties and their parents, and goes out of its way to give those people a lift that they wouldn't have otherwise got. And you only need to go down to Stephen Wiltshire Centre and talk to any of the parents to see the difference that's making. And that was purely Sue's idea to do such a thing, having learned an awful lot about the plight of children and parents in such circumstances. We will shortly be opening a new youth centre in White City. White City is one of the poorest areas in Northwest Europe, and children born there are meant to have very different life expectancies and a range of different criteria to people born in much more wealthy circumstances. And we can change that, and we should change that. But that takes investments, and the youth centre linked to our industrial strategy that will show children that can shape the future in the most idealistic way and be the best life they possibly want to live is fundamental to what's going to happen in White City, and is fundamental to what Sue stood for in her time. She's been a close confidant and friend. She's been one of the founding people of this operation, And therefore, it is. I'm sorry to see Sue step down. I want to say very much how grateful I am to all of the work and advice and just sheer brilliance that she's brought to the Hammersmith and Fulham Labour administration. So thank you very much, Sue. Congratulations to Sharon, who will do a great job. Congratulations to Alexandra, who will also do a great job in CPAC, assuming those votes go through tonight. But thank you very much, Councillor Sue McMillan.
Thank you very much. And moving on to Sue McMillan, Councillor McMillan.
She's on mute.
I think you're on mute, Sue.
There you go. I'm very practiced at this. Sorry, hello, I wasn't expecting to speak, but I should respond, I suppose, to that. Thank you very much for your kind words, Councillor Cowan. You're absolutely right there. When I turned up however many years ago at the meeting, I had no intention of getting involved in politics locally. I'd just finished working for the Labour Party for 8 years, and that was it. I was done. I wanted to go and enjoy the real world, and I certainly wasn't intending on becoming chair of the Labour Party locally, and I definitely wasn't intending on becoming a local councillor. But Councillor Cowan is a very persuasive man, and over a number of meetings persuaded me that it would be something I should think about doing, and it would be something that would be both, an enormous privilege to be able to do, and something that would be absolutely fascinating and rewarding for myself personally. And I have to say, he was absolutely right. It's been an incredible privilege to be part of this cabinet for the last 7 years, to serve the people of Hammersmith and Fulham in the way that we've been able to be able to take the innovative approach to local government that we've been able to take as an administration, to be able to keep council tax low, to be able to continue to improve the services despite huge cuts from central government over the last however many years. I've learned so much. It's been, just one of the greatest privileges of my life, and I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be able to do that. And I think possibly one of the most rewarding has been the people I've worked with on the Labour group, who are an outstanding group of people in terms of talent, ability, how much they care about serving the local community. And it's just, it's genuinely been a privilege to work alongside all of you. So I won't say any more. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I have absolutely no doubt that Sharon is going to do an even better job in the cabinet than I did. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor McMillan. Councillor Hearn, do the Labour group note the report on the appointment of the Deputy Leader and Cabinet members?
Noted.
Councillor Carmel, do the Conservative group note the report on the appointment of the Deputy Leader and Cabinet members?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 7.3, Pension Fund Governance Arrangements. I call upon the Leader of the Council, Councillor Cowan, to move the report and recommendations.
Formally moved.
Councillor Hearn, do the Labour group agree the report and recommendations?
Agreed.
Councillor Carmel, do the Conservative group agree the report and recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you. For the benefit of the recording, does any member wish to vote differently? The recommendations are unanimously carried. Item 7.4, allocation of seats and proportionality on committees. I call upon the Leader, Councillor Cowan, to remove the report and recommendations.
Formally moved.
Councillor Ahern, do the Labour group note the report and the allocation of seats on committees?
Agreed.
Councillor Carmel, do the Conservative group note the report on the allocation of seats on the committees?
Duly noted.
For the benefit of the record or recording, does any member wish to vote differently? Thank you. The recommendations are unanimously carried. Item 7.5, appointment of chairs and committee memberships. I call upon the Leader of the Council, Councillor Cowan, to move the report and recommendations. Please note a change to the opposition membership of the Licensing Committee. Councillor Brocklebank Fowler is to be replaced by Councillor Stanton.
Formally moved.
Councillor Ahern, do the Labour group agree the report and its recommendations as amended?
Agreed.
Councillor Carmel, do the Conservative group agree the report and its recommendations as amended?
Agreed.
For the benefit of the recording, does any member wish to vote differently? The recommendations are unanimously carried. Sorry, the recommendations as amended are unanimously carried. Item 7.6, council appointments to the local government organisation and outside bodies. I call upon the leader, Councillor Cowan, to move the report and recommendations.
Formally moved.
Does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Ahern, do the Labour Group agree the report and its recommendations?
Agreed.
Councillor Carmel, do the Conservative Group agree the report and its recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you. For the benefit of the recording, does any member wish to vote differently? The recommendations are carried. Appointment of independent persons. I call upon the leader, Councillor Cowan, to move the report and recommendations.
Formally moved.
Councillor Ahern, do the Labour Group agree the report and its recommendations?
Agreed.
Councillor Carmel, do the Conservative Group agree the report and its recommendations?
Agreed.
For the benefit of the recording, does any member wish to vote differently? The recommendations are unanimously carried. Item 7.8, Dispensation Report. I call upon the leader, Councillor Cowan, to move the report and recommendations.
Formally moved.
Councillor Ahern, do the Labour Group agree the report and its recommendations?
Agreed.
Sorry, Councillor Carmel, I didn't see your hand up. Do you wish to speak?
Very briefly, if I may, and without being unduly critical of my government, I regret, and I think this is a cross-party issue, the abolition of the permission to hold remote meetings, and we as a group have lobbied for an extension of the ability of remote meetings, but we appreciate the extension for those councillors who are still shielding the permission to miss meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carmel. So, Councillor Carmel, do the Conservative Group agree the report and its recommendation?
Absolutely.
Thank you. For the benefit of the recording, does any member wish to vote differently? The recommendations are unanimously carried. Item 7.9, Members' Allowances Scheme Annual Review 2021 to 22. I call upon the leader, Councillor Cowan, to move the report and recommendations.
Formally moved.
Does anybody wish to speak on this item? Councillor Ahern, do the Labour Group agree the report and its recommendations?
Agreed.
Councillor Carmel, do the Conservative Group agree the report and its recommendations?
Notwithstanding our previous speeches, agreed.
For the benefit of the recording, does any member wish to vote differently? The recommendations are unanimously carried. Item 7.10, Revised Financial Regulations 2021. I call upon Councillor Max Schmidt, Cabinet Member for Finance and Commercial Services, to move the report and recommendations.
Formally moved, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ahern, do the Labour Group agree the report and its recommendations?
Agreed.
Councillor Carmel, the Conservative Group agree the report and its recommendations?
We agree.
The recommendations, sorry, for the benefit of the recording, does any member wish to vote differently? The recommendations are carried. Item 7.11, Review of the Constitution. I call upon the leader, Councillor Cowan, to move the report and recommendations.
Formally moved.
Councillor Ahern, do the Labour Group agree the report and recommendations?
Agreed.
Councillor Carmel, do the Conservative Group agree the report and its recommendations?
We agree.
For the benefit of the recording, does any member wish to vote differently? The recommendations are carried. Item 7.12, Leader's Annual Report. I call upon the Leader of the Council, Councillor Cowan, to address the Council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I address the Council in the most unusual of circumstances, not least because it's virtual, but virtual because of the consequence of a global pandemic. A pandemic that has shut down our society as we know it, affecting businesses, and affecting people. And as we heard from our young politicians tonight, causing all sorts of problems, people of all age ranges, particularly the young. It has offered a series of challenges to this borough that have required enterprise, fortitude, creativity, and a determination to do the right thing by the people and businesses of this borough. And therefore, I am happy to report that that is exactly what's happened. I want to pay huge tribute to the residents of this borough who, in their huge generosity and kindness, have stepped up, whether volunteering in their thousands or whether quietly just collecting things for their neighbours who were shielding with fear for their lives. This has been a time when many things could have happened, but the right thing happened, which is people came together. And you saw not just that sense of common purpose when we stood on the doorsteps clapping our NHS, our social care workers, and all those key workers who did their bit to keep all of us safe. But you also saw, I think, behind it, the sheer professionalism of this council. I can't tell you how much I admire the work done by Kim Smith and her team. I honestly believe, and I hope and believe all councillors will agree, we have the best senior leadership team in local government. Any one of them you could pick out for the things that they did in these very difficult times. But the fact is, they worked around the clock, quietly making sure that people kept safe, businesses were supported, and things got done. And it has been tough, whether it's putting people on the riverbank to make sure we try and police crowds of people desperate to get out and get fresh air, whether it's been organising testing and tracing, where we pioneered a scale that meant we were leaders in the country, whether it's been arguing for a lockdown as we did, our officers have done us genuinely proud. And as much as we credit everybody tonight for public service, it's often easy to forget the officers. So thank you to Kim, thank you to this team, which I can tell you have worked round the clock, 7 days a week, some of them exhausted, not taking holidays because they were so keen to get the right thing done by our residents. That's been the story of this year, coming together in the harshest circumstances with some of the lowest levels of council funding we've had in modern history, compared to even just 10 years ago. But lots of good things have happened. As we look forward, and this afternoon I chaired a meeting of the West London Economic Prosperity Board. The figures are daunting. The possible unemployment rates, particularly in northwest London, are stomach-churningly worrying. The number of people already going home and worrying what's going to happen to them and their families will require another year where we act with the same characteristics that we've done in the last 12 months. And all I can say is I'm filled with confidence that we will rise to those challenges because of what I've seen. So that's my report. Thank you to everybody who's made this year a much more bearable 12 months. And let's do our best over the next 12 months to do what all of us pledged to do when we were elected into office, which is to serve the people of this borough, keep them safe, and do our best to improve their well-being. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cowan. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I firstly echo the thanks of the leader of the group of the council towards the all the staff and the officers of the borough, from Kim Smith, our chief executive, down through all her senior team and all the junior officers and all those people that help serve our borough and our residents. As we've all appreciated over the last 12-14 months, this has been an extraordinary year in our borough's history, one that we would never have wished to happen. And as I said in my budget council speech, you know, I also want to pay tribute to the administration councillors and the leader of the council, who have undoubtedly, you know, had to carry that burden of administration during this difficult time. You know, because of this, you know, because, you know, annual council in itself should be, you know, a positive reflection of what we're doing in our borough and what the council is trying to do. You know, I'm not going to, you know, make examples of things that we disagree with. Obviously, I've done that in previous speeches in the budget, and obviously we'll return to that at future council meetings. But, you know, I just want to reiterate those thanks to all those members within the council, but also our residents as well, because, you know, my strongest realisation, I think, over the last 12 months is, you know, government can lead, and it can put out guidelines, and it can procure equipment and vaccines and organise its distribution both at a national level but also at a local level, and all the other plethora of things that both local and national government do. But it's only a partnership with you know, the citizens of our country and the residents of our borough. So I also want to thank you know, those residents, many of who have had an extraordinarily difficult time with you know, losing loved ones or battling through, you know, the serious illness of COVID. As well as the leader of the council mentioned, you know, the economic challenges, especially for the most vulnerable people in our society and those with the most vulnerable of employment statuses. And that's obviously something that, you know, potentially is only just beginning, and it's something that we've got to tackle as a country, as a continent, as a world, but also, you know, as a borough. You know, so that is something that we will obviously support. You know, the administration and do our bit to champion those businesses and residents, both to the council but also to government where necessary. You know, I've been very moved. I know other people have been very moved. You know, by you know, the speeches tonight in memoriam. You know, of two great Britons. You know, so I just want to finish off with three messages. One regarding, you know, the pandemic, that, you know, for all residents, you know, whilst things are looking brighter and you know, the economy is starting to open up, it's still a point of danger, and that it's important for people to stay vigilant and stay safe and to get the vaccine when they're asked to do so. But also, you know, I want to, as a group of councillors and as a cabinet, as a council, you know, think of, for the future, what would the Duke of Edinburgh do, and be more like Mike. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We now move on to item 8 on reports to note. Item 8.1, the annual report of the Policy and Accountability Committees 2020 to 2021. I call upon Councillor Rory Vaughan to move the report and recommendations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for calling me to speak on this report tonight. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, residents and others watching on YouTube, it's a pleasure to be able to introduce the annual report of the Policy and Accountability Committees. In these most unusual pandemic times, this has been a year like no other, particularly as this municipal year has only been about 5 months long. However, as this substantial report shows, the Policy and Accountability Committees have continued to undertake a broad range of work in that short space of time. This has included, as you'd expect, considering the Council's work relating to COVID-19 and scrutinising budget plans. But it has also involved discussing the substantial and important work of the Climate and Ecological Emergency and Arts Commissions, which will help shape policy in the borough in these vital areas. And there is also much more besides. So I'd urge you all to read the report in full, given obviously the comprehensive nature of the work of the 6 packs that's detailed in it. And we've continued to hear from across the packs, from residents and businesses in these debates and discussions that we've had at PAX, obviously at the moment in the modern way via Microsoft Teams or Zoom, despite the current circumstances, which has critically enhanced the quality of these deliberations, hearing from those who the policies will affect and getting their involvement in the policy making and scrutiny function of the council. But moving to slightly more parochial matters, as chair of the Housing, Economy, Housing and Arts PAC, I'd like to thank all the residents, officers and businesses who have been part of our work this year. It is invaluable. And I'd especially like to thank Jonathan Church, his fellow Arts Commissioners and the advisors to the Commission for the substantial report that they put together. I hope its recommendations will help to enhance the cultural life of our borough even further in the post-COVID years to come, when we can all enjoy, once again, the rich cultural offerings Hammersmith and Fulham has. But anyway, in closing, let me thank all of those who have helped to enhance the quality of across all of the PACs this year. Residents, co-optees, expert witnesses, officers and businesses. And to all of those people that I've just thanked, I'd like to thank you in advance for the invaluable input you will make again in the coming year. We look forward to working with you all again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Carmel, I see you have your hand up.
Oh, sorry. I was going to speak, but the point I was going to make has been covered, so I withdraw my hand.
Thank you very much. Are there anybody else wish to speak? Okay. Thank you. Councillor Ahern, do the Labour Group note the report and its recommendations?
Noted.
Councillor Carmel, do the Conservative Group note the report and its recommendations?
Duly noted.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be
with respect, Mr. Mayor, at the end of this meeting, can I express the congratulations of the Conservative Group on your re-election as Mayor and express a hope and expectation that the following year will be harmonious.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I hope so too. And just as I come to close the meeting, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. And I think I'm going to follow the advice of Councillor Vaughan and one or two others who have put a mantra into my head of, I want to be like Mike. And I sense a large glass of red wine calling. So on that, have a wonderful evening and we'll see everybody next time around, hopefully live. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.